I'm Father Matthew Hawkins of the Diocese of Pittsburgh. It's hard for people who have 21st century sensibilities to grasp the importance of the ritual in our worship. We live in a culture and at a time where most people, including self-proclaimed spiritual people, do not recognize anything as being sacred. At best, most people might say that they feel close to God in some abstract and emotional way, but they regard ritual as unnecessary to encounter God. Even worse, they may regard ritual as mere superstition. Even people who come to Sunday Mass on a regular basis often complain that it is the same old thing over and over again. They are bored with the sacraments, with the liturgy, and with the ritual of it all. They see the repetitive nature of ritual as being a weakness in our style of worship and as being unnecessary. When someone says our style of worship, there are two things that we should keep in mind. First, it is not our style of worship. It is the style, if you will, in which God has given us to worship. When you read the book of Revelation, many parts of it will seem very familiar to you because it is largely a vision of the celebration of the Mass. God gives us the words to offer perfect praise because when we use our own words and invent our own worship services, we end up worshiping ourselves and not God. In other words, we are not drawn out of ourselves when we invent our own style of worship. We do not transcend our human way of thinking about things. Instead, we reinvent God in our own image. The second thing to keep in mind when people talk about our style of worship is that the repetition of the ritual is boring only if we allow it to be. The worship to which God has instructed the community of the faithful, beginning with the Hebrews and extended to us, is meant to be something that we return to again and again. It is meant to be something that is largely unchanged. For the most part, the worship with which we worship is unchanged from one year to the next. But we are not unchanged. We are not the same. And that is the point. We are not the same each time we worship together in the assembly. We have grown. We have changed. We bring different fears, different anxieties, different joys, and more wisdom each time we come to Mass to worship. This is also true of the repetitive prayers that we pray, such as the Liturgy of the Hours or the Holy Rosary. The structure and many of the words remain the same, but we ourselves have changed, and that makes all the difference in the world. When we grasp this, when we have this understanding, then we can begin to understand the deep and profound meaning of the first reading for today's Mass. The first reading which comes to us from the letter to the Hebrews, although we don't know who wrote it. And this describes the ritual sacrifice in the early community of faith, the ancient Hebrews. Contemporary readers may wonder, what has all of this got to do with us? The writer speaks of the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of a heifer's ashes. We don't do that today. But the sacrificial offering that we make today is patterned after the sacrifice described in the letter to the Hebrews. Or to be more accurate, the sacrifice described in the letter to the Hebrews is patterned after the sacrifice we offer today, because the sacrifice we offer today is not our own. It has been given to us by Jesus Christ. The sacrifice that we offer today is the prototype for the ancient sacrifice described in the letter to the Hebrews. Their sacrifice came first in time and in history. But God's sacrifice came first in timelessness and in all of eternity. Their sacrifice was an imperfect shadow of the sacrifice that God himself was to offer in Jesus, the second person of the Holy Trinity. This is only the beginning of the awe, wonder, and mystery with which we should approach this text in the celebration of the Mass. When we look a little deeper, we begin to understand that the ancient people found life-transforming meaning in their ritual offering to God because that was a shadow, a precursor in time of the eternal sacrifice that transcends time itself. The sacrifice they offered came as close as they could get to an encounter with God and to cleansing their flesh of their sins. We should not see these people as being superstitious or naive, or for believing that the blood of bulls and goats and the sprinkling of heifers' ashes could temporarily cleanse the flesh of their sins. As the author of the letter to the Hebrews pointed out, it could cleanse their flesh temporarily of their sins, but it could not cleanse their soul of their sins for all eternity. It took great wisdom for them to understand this. It took the kind of wisdom that we don't have enough of today. But as the author of the letter to the Hebrews points out, if created things behind the veil of the Holy of Holies could give the people temporary relief from the burden of their sins in terms of the flesh, imagine the power of the body and blood of the uncreated Word, the Son of God and the Son of Man, to free us from the sins of our souls and to impart to us his Spirit for all eternity. This happens when we participate in the ritual sacrifice of the Mass and the rite of reconciliation that so many of us are bored with and take for granted. And so, the author of the letter to the Hebrews beautifully and descriptively said that the high priest, who himself was not free from sin, was replaced by the high priest who is Jesus Christ, and who has made it possible for us to participate in his sacrifice, which cleanses both the body and the soul from sin. The author of the letter to the Hebrews also beautifully said that the tabernacle that was designed and created by human hands was replaced by the tabernacle that existed before all creation. There is splendor and wonder and beauty in all of this. God is not some lifeless token or idol to whom we pay tribute. God is the source of our being, who cleanses our minds and our bodies of their dead works. God renews us and restores us to life. The next time someone asks you what you get out of going to Mass when it is all the same old thing over and over again, just remind them that the practice of the ritual is not a problem for us. Although the ritual remains the same, we ourselves are changed. Therefore, we do not experience the ritual in quite the same way each time we practice it. God does not change, but we do. We encounter and experience God differently at different stages of our lives and different moments of the day. Therefore, our encounter with God can never be the same as it was the day before. This is the wonder and the beauty of our style of worship, which is really God's style that is a gift to us. Let us always cherish this gift. Let us never feel distant from it, and let us never take it for granted.